Welcome to Crying Out Cloud, the podcast that will make you laugh, cry, and reconsider all of your cloud security fears. I'm Eden from the CTO team at Wiz, and I'm here with my remarkable co-host Amitai from the Threat Research team.
Hi, Eden.
And joining us today for the final episode of the season is our very special guest, Yinon Costica.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yinon is the Vice President of Product and a co-founder at Wiz. His journey into cybersecurity began in the 8200 Intelligence Unit of the Israeli Defense Force, where he headed a cyber division. And until 2015, he was the Vice President of Adallom, which was then acquired by Microsoft. And at Microsoft, Yinon led the Cloud Security Group product organization. In 2020, he left Microsoft to co-found Wiz. And today he's one of our fearless leaders here. I will just say personally that he is truly a visionary, and I get to come to work every day and soak up his ideas and knowledge, and so you are all in for a very big treat. Okay, well, welcome. Let's get started. We like to start off the podcast when we have a guest with a speed round of questions. And we usually do this to break the ice, but we happen to already know you quite well. So we're going to take it a little further and ask you things we really want to know.
So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Wow, everything. I wanted to be, I think I wanted to be an archaeologist. It started with dinosaurs, of course, but I loved the fact that you can excavate stuff and go back in time and learn about, what used to be here before, all the way to dinosaurs and stuff. That blew my mind as a kid.
And now you're doing cloud archaeology.
Cloud archaeology, yeah.
Looking back in logs.
CVEs from 2020 are sort of like dinosaurs.
Yeah, still are there.
Okay, so I know you bike to work because I've seen you on Rothschild before. When you're biking, what do you listen to on the way, or are you on Zoom calls?
Oh, good question. First, I will say that if I have one earphone.
Safety first.
Yeah, safety first. And if I do listen to something, it is Zoom. So yeah, if I'm not on a Zoom, I'm trying to enjoy the ride.
So you have a dog, Omri,
Omri.
which we all know because he runs around everywhere in the building. Is he applying to be the head of dog product at Wiz? Or is Mika the only dog in the C-suite and she ever will be?
Oh, Mika is definitely the only dog in the C-suite. Omri looks up to her significantly. She's like his older mentor and older sister. Yeah, I don't think he would apply.
Okay, maybe your assistant. I don't know.
If you were the Bill Gates of vaccines, but for vulnerabilities, which vulnerability class would you eliminate?
Authentication bypass, because it's almost unfair when you get an authentication bypass because you put so much effort in authentication, and when someone bypasses you, it's just not fair.
That's a good answer.
Very solid answer.
Do you meditate?
I do meditate while running. So I do Zen, same way that I'm not listening to music while biking, I don't listen to music while running. And that's actually my favorite treat of the week, to go on a run on the beach for a long hour plus and meditate.
Amazing. We like that. We know you admire art. There's lots of beautiful art all over Wiz offices. What is your favorite exhibit that you saw recently?
I just came back from New York, and I've seen the Basquiat and the Andy Warhol Four Hands exhibition. So if you know, Basquiat and Andy Warhol were basically collaborating, where one was doing the beginning of the painting, then the other would add onto it with their own genres. And basically it was a really amazing exhibition, just in the sense of seeing through these two artists and how they expressed concepts and thoughts that I think resonate until today, and how relevant they are today. I personally really, really liked it, and I think it's on until January in New York, so if someone still can listen in,
go
go to it, don't miss it.
So how many languages do you speak?
3.5. I speak fluently Hebrew, English, and French. And I study Arabic. I mean, I knew Arabic, I forgot Arabic, and now I'm restudying it with Duolingo. It's going well. I think I'm picking it up, but that's a half.
That's a half. How do you say you have 0 critical issues in French?
J'ai zéro vulnérabilité critique.
Take that
When we eventually globalize the Wiz product and do translations, then you could supervise.
2024.
On the roadmap. Okay, let's jump into the real meaty questions. There was a story a few weeks ago in the US that was big in the newspapers, which there was a cyber attack on US hospitals, and it diverted ambulances from emergency rooms in many states. And so quite literally this attack stopped people from getting critical medical care. And Amitai and I were talking about this earlier, and he was like, wow, not that long ago this happened at a hospital in Israel.
Yeah.
And I think it really begs the question that Wiz does an amazing job helping organizations, governments, startups protect their customers from cyber incidents. But as an individual who has your data, and I think Amitai and I have our data all over the cloud, how do you describe to individuals how your work trickles down to affect people?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that while any organization, any development team should think about how to secure their data, what are the risks, our goal is actually to have the individuals, the average consumer, I would say, not thinking about it when they choose, when they think about where their data sits, right? So it's a very important that in order to keep the world operating and move it forward, we just have the digital trust in our surrounding. Same way that we have trust in the world that we live in, right? So we feel safe, I hope, walking around and living our lives, despite the fact that there are many risks. We are aware, we are taking basically precautions, but we trust the world we live in. In the same manner, we need to be able to trust the digital space. And I think that in that sense, my goal is to make sure that everything that we use as consumers is protected and protecting our data when we use it. And there is a long way to go, I think. The fact that there are still so many breaches and so many data leakage and so many frauds and so many incidents where we as individuals, again, feel compromised in a way. I think that this is the key element that we need to fix in the way we build. And I think that the more we feel it as individuals, the more important it becomes for the organizations to build that trust and to show their consumers why they should trust them. Yeah. So actually security and trust become of a higher priority. And I think there is a lot that is going on in this space in order to make sure that we all understand the responsibility that we take when we actually take customer data, individuals' data that we have towards them.
Yeah.
So consumers should basically be ideally taking for granted that their data is safe, and the only thing they should be comparing when they want to know which app to use should just be, does it work, does it do what I want it to do, and the security aspects should basically be like...
Yeah, I think that this is the word we want to go to. So I think in a world that has more regulations, like GDPR started, but we have a very long way to go with the level of security and so on. I think we need to have the regulation in place to make sure that if we are serving individuals and if we are storing their data, and if, I don't know, there is an application that asks you for your credit card number or for your social security number, we have the proper provisions to secure it. And if we don't, we are not on the market. So I think that this is this is the future of where we need to be in. So we as consumers, as individuals, can simply consume from the cloud. Same way that you buy food on the street. And in stores, in street, you want to know, you know that it's clean, it's safe, you can eat it, you'll be fine, you'll enjoy it. And that's the same thing we should basically thrive for when we think about our digital space.
Yeah, sort of like you can rely on you trust the fact that if there's a restaurant that you walk into and you pay the money, then they're probably some sort of regulation and some sort of
Exactly.
inspector came and made sure there's no cockroaches in the food.
Exactly.
They're just a few more years ahead of us.
A few. There's a long way to go,
Yeah.
but we're moving fast.
Yeah.
We're moving fast.
And in order to have this, we'll call it Yinon's world of cybersecurity, right? This kind of more advanced model. What should everyone be doing that they're not today? Like, what is the advice to security teams across the world in all these organizations and governments, etc.?
The one thing we should do that we may not be doing enough is actually requiring everybody to take part on the security journey. Okay, and it's important because when I'm driving, for instance, I'm putting my seatbelt. I'm making sure that I'm not driving too fast. I'm making sure that I'm driving safely, not to hurt myself or my surrounding. And in the same way, I think that organizations, developers, they need to take the same provisions when they think about the digital safety, the digital security. And I think that it cannot be solely the responsibility of the security teams. Okay, it's not only for police to make sure we're driving okay, right? We should actually be sure that every driver drives safely. Every developer thinks about security at the get-go and doesn't wait until there is some kind of a security policy that blocks them before they commit some code, right? So we want to make sure that we ingrain security into the day-to-day of the developers, of the leaders, of the product owners, of the business. Because the more we ingrain that security into their mindset, we are actually creating an environment that basically builds more secure products at the get-go, and eventually we'll get to where we want to be in this, nirvana digital space that we're talking about. But again, I think it's very feasible. We have seen significant strides, like in the way we approach security, in the way we build security into our development life cycle, the way we measure security, the way we regulate security. And the more we take this concept and make it, democratize it to everyone, I think we have a better chance to get faster into that.
I think measurement is also really important because it makes it a lot easier to deal with it. Because instead of it being like security as a general concept, you have like a developer can just say at any given point during the development lifecycle, they can ask themselves or they can ask some sort of system, am I doing this properly?
Yeah,
will I run into problems later on?
I think measurement is one. The other thing is education. Unfortunately, I think that the biggest gap we have is actually education. Because in most cases, and again, from my experience, in most cases when you find the stuff that are, bad, bad behaviors, insecure behaviors, when you go back, it's not that anybody did it on purpose.
Of course.
It's not even because they did it because they neglected it and they didn't care. It's really because they simply didn't understand the outcomes. And I think that this is why a major pillar in how we think about how to ingrain security is by educating the teams on how good looks like. And that's probably one of the challenges that we see because it's really hard to do it through classes, right? I cannot teach how good looks like. And one of the things, again, sharing from my experience, one of the things that has really proved to be very effective is to, and we do it with every day. We basically connect to actual running environments. We find stuff that don't look good, that are very insecure, and then we describe them in a way that is very, let's say, simple to understand. So we build this attack path using the graph. We use nice colors. We explain that it's very pretty. It's very non-intimidating. But when you read it as a non-security personnel, you immediately understand, oh my God, so this is the outcome of what I did earlier. Like I built this up not knowing that this would be the outcome. Now I'm much more, I know how good looks like. So next time I will think twice. Second, I'm naturally incentivized to fix it. And 3, I'm actually reducing the risk continuously. So I think that this is education more than measurement is really key. Once I'm educated and basically I know how good looks like, then we can measure the bad or the good, depends on how you want to look at it.
Well, that's also like a very positive way of looking at it.
Yeah, we always want to be positive because again, security teams, they can look at it from the negative point of view.
Pessimistic.
But if we really want to democratize security, it has to be something positive. It has to be something that we are doing and we are happy about what we do and we feel confident doing. And I think that this is one of the only ways to win it is to build more, pink and blue into how we describe security.
Yeah. So Yinon, you've been on both the offensive and defensive sides of the aisle throughout your career. What sort of problems have you encountered over the past few decades that you are continuously surprised haven't been solved yet?
First, I'll start with identity. The fact that still the majority of the breaches, and it was just reinforced now with the recent Google Cloud security report, the majority of the breaches still start with a default password or a weak password or a reused password. This is mind-blowing for me.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we weren't able to tackle that problem that is so fundamental, I think since the day we started doing cyber, and it still accounts for the majority of the breaches. I think this is like one thing that I'm truly surprised that we didn't fix. On a different level, in terms of the security stack, I'm still surprised by the fragmentation that we see in the security stack. The fragmentation leads to complexity. Complexity leads to significant reduced ability to be effective in how we tackle security. And I think that, we could have done so much better if we had basically persisted on having more consolidated, more consistent products that are end-to-end versus building and meshing our own Frankenstein security stack that basically, requires so many efforts, so many integrations, so many translations between products that it's almost impossible to win when we are operating in such a fragmented space. So I think these are two areas that I really think we should solve for. I think maybe on the other sense, in terms of how we think about solutions, I think that one of the things we've touched on earlier in this podcast, but basically the ability to build secure by design systems. I think that security was very, very reactive for years in the approach. Like let's detect the bad guys. Well, guess what? It's too late, right? And
you guys have been hanging out here for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Your files are already ransomed.
So this is on detect the bad guys. Now the one click to the left is, okay, let's wait for the security team to find the stuff. No, guess what? You shouldn't wait. We should really, really put an emphasis on building secure by design at the get-go. And I think that this is not too much to ask. And I think that now we are seeing the beginning. I think we are, 10% in actually understanding that, yes, we can do it. And I think that this is probably one of the trends that I would have loved to accelerate because it can really fix a lot of the inefficiencies that we deal with today.
Yeah.
Something very interesting on the graph that people are talking a lot about these days. It's AI.
Oh my God. We said AI only one time until...
If this was a drinking game, then people would be very sober.
So AI is opening a lot of questions. I think open any podcast or news or discussion, everyone's saying what's next with AI, and I think AI also opens a completely new frontier in cybersecurity. But then you kind of take a step back and you're like, does it actually cause us to build new tools, or can we leverage the security tools that already exist?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I would lie if I'd say that I'm not asking about it every day, multiple times by customers, because I think AI really, one, is already being, I would say, experimented by the large majority of customers. And it's mind-blowing to see the pace in which, given cloud, customers can innovate. So this is one thing that is truly exciting, that it's actually being experimented with, and as a result, and this is also something that is positive that I want to pause for a second and mention, it's almost the first time that we introduce a technology, and at the same time, we talk about how to secure the technology. If we think about cloud, it took us almost a decade from the moment we started using the cloud until we figured out how do we actually secure that cloud. And if we look at any technology, there was a gap. Security always came later on. And with AI, and this is I think, just attests for the priority or basically the place cybersecurity plays in our mindset today. Actually, AI is introduced in the same time that we talk about how do we secure the use of AI. So first, I want to pause and say that this is a great moment for us as technologists and security people, and I think it's a very healthy discussion to be in. Now, to your question about what it introduces. So when we think about AI applications, specifically, I would say generative AI, there is a lot of known, but there is also some unknown. When we think about an AI application, what it entails, so of course there is an infrastructure layer that I'm using. There is an overlay application that is exposing the AI in some way. And then there is a huge black box that now we have that is called the AI model. And this black box is something that very few understand, if at all. We don't know what got into it, meaning what training data it was trained on. Does it contain sensitive data? Does it contain my data? Does it contain data that I didn't intend to share? Does it contain secrets to my environment that I didn't realize it actually learned in one way? And then we have no idea what would be the outputs, because we have a very large aperture by which we are allowing it to be interrogated. So natural language, just ask a question, get an answer. So what would be the outputs from that model? And I think that when we think about the model, this introduces a whole new area that we need, like we did with software in the past and cloud services today, and basically understanding what is the provenance of this AI model and how do we put guardrails on the output that it actually delivers. And while I think the application and the infrastructure layers will be covered with existing tools, I think that the AI model itself will require a different approach. We need to be able to track, for instance, the learning process. We need to be able to have lineage to all of the training data set. We need to understand how do we incorporate learnings over time, because there are new questions that come in. Does it include customer data? Does it not? We cannot rely on it. We need to be able to basically attest for the nature of the data that was used to train it later on. And I think that all of these questions are new to us, and we have to be able to solve and address them before we start using AI at scale.
It's interesting, like we're at this point in the cloud journey, but like your career in many ways came up alongside the cloud. You've been here for a lot of the stops along the way.
Makes me sound so old. I was here before the cloud was.
I'm not trying to age you. But it is true that the evolution of the cloud was influenced by a lot of the work you've done and organizations that you've led or been a critical part of, which is very cool. But where do we go from here? Like, there's more than AI. Like, where are we going in terms of new security domains? Are we going back on-prem? What's coming?
Yeah, like, is the cloud only going to get bigger? Is it going to get smaller?
What's the crystal ball
Is it going to
saying?
rain? Is it going to be lightning?
No, I think that in general, I think cloud is really is an amazing technology. It allows everybody to be accessible to the latest and greatest the tech has to offer. And AI, by the way, is a perfect example. Without cloud, AI wouldn't have been possible. The adoption of AI is so fast because of the how accessible cloud is, right? So one, I think the ability to innovate in the cloud and use the latest and greatest of what technology has to offer, that's something that will always be, I think, the driving factor in continuing and adopting the cloud. It's just the cutting edge is out there. Second, I think that it allows us, another thing that it allowed us to do in a sense is to be truly elastic and more efficient in how we run many of our operations. So the elasticity that cloud allows us to leverage, we basically consume only what we need to use. And if we think about the efficiencies that it drives, so obviously I think that it's a huge benefit for any business out there. With that, I think that there is also an interesting trend. If I have an application that is already modernized, running on the cloud, but I don't need to innovate in, and I have a fixed, let's say a fixed consumption that I have. So we see some customers actually looking to reduce the cost by running it elsewhere, on-prem, in private cloud. It's still cloud, but it's just a private one. We have modernized the app. Now we understand what's the best way to run it. And then we see something, I think some call it shift back. So the ability to shift back some of the workloads to our private cloud, especially for cost reasons. And that's totally perfect. It's a totally perfect reason, and I think it makes sense. But it still requires us to protect it in the same way. And we have the measures, like when we think even about how customers use Wiz, it's both for public cloud, which is the obvious, but also for private cloud, clusters, VMware, like what's running on-prem. And having this single pane of glass, once you have modernized the app, is amazing. You can run it wherever you want. You can protect it in the same manner. So I think this is one trend that is we definitely see more and more. I think in terms of security, we talked about AI, so I won't double click into it, but that's definitely a very significant trend we see, and it's already happening. I think that next year we'll just see the move towards productization of many AI-based products, where this year was mostly about experimentation with AI, understanding the tech, what it means, how to secure it. And I think next year it will really become like part of our productized applications. And that's the second trend that we'll see. And my third would be actually around driving everything back to code. And I want to explain just a second about this. The more cloud native we become, the more our cloud environment and architecture, both infra and application, are driven by code first. So it means that instead of looking at the cloud risks, what we actually need to do is to be able to translate the risks that are out there to code fixes that would be incorporated into the code that generated the environment in the first place, and then redeploy. The redeployment would fix the risk initially, but I think that the trend that I really see next year is translating a lot of what we do on the right to meaningful guidance in the left, meaningful actions on the left, in the sense that we will have automated fixes to the code or semi-automated fixes to the code that will generate the fix. The reason that I think that this is so dramatically a dramatic game changer is because in some way it allows us to, like we started with, what's the outcome for the individual in the street, right? So I think that it allows us to a bit hide the gory details of the risks from the day-to-day developers and just show them, you know what, you have so much risk, but fix that line of code and you'll be so much better off. And I'm going to give you the fix. Just roll it out to prod and you'll be fine. Yeah. So it allows us to simplify the discussion even more and, again, focus on the positive outcomes that we want to have by fixing a code rather than talking about the risks that we continue on showing that we need for educational purposes, but not on a day-to-day. So I think this is one other thing that really, I'm seeing as a trend that has to happen if we want to remediate at scale at some point.
Okay, so it's about to be the New Year's, and when everyone asks for their New Year's resolutions.
New Year's resolutions.
But you get on a lot of calls with customers. You talk to a lot of customers. CISOs. What are their New Year's resolutions? What are they sharing with you?
Well, with customers that aren't yet such, but they always strive to have zero criticals on Wiz. You get these nice wags.
Zero Critical Club is where it's at.
Anybody that is not there yet, I think that's a good New Year's resolution. Just remove the criticals from your cloud.
Yeah.
And
You'll sleep better at night.
Sleep better at night,
Yeah.
exactly.
Your Aura Ring will tell you have high scores on your sleep if you're in the Zero Critical Club.
The other thing, just tapping to my last point on the trend, I think everything is code. I think it makes everything we do so much more scalable, fixable, easier to understand and control. So I think that if we get everything as code in our environment, whether it's a policy, an application, the way we build an AI model, everything described in a way that we can interpret in code and fix in code, I think that would be huge advancement. And the third thing, what should be my third thing? I just came back from reInvent. And we had this nice booth with a diner, with donuts, and with socks. So I would say that, next year will be, I hope, even better. And I would put on my New Year resolution to visit every Wiz booth and get the Wiz socks, so you never miss a sock in your life. And basically, just have fun while doing security.
We're having fun while doing security.
We're having fun while podcasting about having fun in security.
It's real meta. Okay, we're going to wrap up the episode. And by doing that, we do these things called the podaways.
Okay.
Alternatively, take-a-pods. Podcast takeaways. So just if someone happened to have tuned out or they want to just make sure they took away the most critical parts of the episode, what would you make sure everyone walks away from this episode knowing?
I would say, in the positive way that we talked about, I would say that we have the real opportunity to build a digital space that is secured. If we ingrain security into what everybody does, and we think about security, and we understand the responsibility that we have in delivering secured applications, secure digital environment. And I think that the ability to make security simple enough so that everybody can take their part of it, this is what really will make us more secure at scale when we look at the future. And I think that this is something that we have to accelerate and make part of our lives, and do it in a positive way.
Do it while smiling.
And have fun while doing it.
Yeah.
And in French.
And in French, or whatever languages you speak, coming to a cloud near you. Thank you for coming, joining us on the pod. We're so honored.
Thank you so much for having me, and keep doing this great, awesome podcast.
Yeah.
Really enjoy listening.
And that's all for this episode of Crying Out Cloud, presented by the cloud security company Wiz. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and remember, unlike your IAM policies, more stars is better. And as always, if your cloud security strategy is making you cry, don't worry, just cry out cloud.